I love the Oscars, and unless the Packers are playing, it is a bigger night to me than the Super Bowl. However, to me this year is extra special, as for the first time I was able to see all the Best Picture nominees before awards night. Now, before I give my list, I would like to mention a few movies that came out this year that didn't end up getting a Best Picture nomination, but I feel they are better than many of the films nominated, so I decided they deserved a mention here. First, Blade Runner 2049, a hauntingly beautiful dystopian sci-fi sequel filled with an incredibly engaging world that you never want to leave, yet you are completely horrified of, and the kind of movie that you'll be thinking about for years and years to come. With brilliant performances from Ryan Gosling and Harrison Ford, and a very interesting one from Jared Leto, this movie is truly a sci-fi masterpiece. And it is actually my second favorite movie of the year. Next, The Disaster Artist, a movie about the making of The Room, what is considered to be the worst movie ever made. Having wonderful performances from James and Dave Franco, I highly recommend this one. It is absolutely hilarious and features a wonderful supporting cast from Seth Rogen to Alison Brie, and every single person brings their A-game in this movie. Lastly, Logan, the final bow for Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, making for a truly incredible film experience, proving comic movies can not only be fun blockbusters, but truly brilliant films. One thing that has to be absolutely mentioned here is Patrick Stewart's kind of snub performance for Best Supporting Actor as Professor Xavier. He does absolutely amazing, showing just the true pain that he is going through as an old, past his prime professor/superhero. Now onto the list. At number 9, we have the possible frontrunner, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which is weird because the frontrunner usually does work for me. But this one just doesn't. This one overall did not appeal to me personally. While I do understand why it could appeal to other people on a certain level, I just have to disagree. The film starts out earnest enough, but slowly devolves into a parody of itself by the third act, and foregoing consequences of many of its characters' actions in place of odd interactions, dialogue, and situations. Pair that with a very unsatisfying story that doesn't go in very many interesting places, you have an overall disappointing experience. Thankfully, very strong acting work from Frances McDormand and Sam Rockwell helped make this an easier watch than it could have been, and Woody Harrelson also delivers a very, very good performance. So yes, while I personally don't understand why this was nominated for Best Picture, I'm sure a lot of people do like it. At number 8, we have The Shape of Water, basically a retelling of Beauty and the Beast in 1962 Baltimore. The film is led by great performances from Sally Hawkins, Octavia Spencer, Michael Shannon, and Doug Jones as the Reptilian Man. These performances help distract from the overall pretty unfocused narrative that at times isn't all that engaging to follow. However, when the film follows Hawkins exploring her relationship with the Reptilian Man and all the events that surround his finding, the film absolutely works. Also, it is worth mentioning that the film is absolutely beautiful to look at, and even hypnotic at times, and on this basis alone, it is worth seeing. Overall, I really did like this one. It just happens to be 7 other films nominated that I preferred, which is a really big testament to how great last year in cinema was. I mean, a very good movie is the 8th ranked one on the Best Picture nominees. That doesn't always happen. At number 7 is The Post, Steven Spielberg's telling of the leaking of the Pentagon Papers, how they ended up in the hands of the Washington Post, and the events following the Post's decisions to publish the papers, revealing how the government lied about the Vietnam War for decades. While an overall good movie, and Spielberg does a good job keeping the story flowing at a very good pace, the real standout here is the performances. Acting veterans Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks of course deliver great performances, but the supporting cast really does stand out as well. These actors, including Sarah Paulson, Bob Odenkirk, Bruce Greenwood, Alison Brie, and David Cross all stand out and all have their moments to shine throughout the movie. This is definitely a historical drama that I would recommend and is very timely and worth seeing. At number 6 is Call Me By Your Name, a very well done coming-of-age drama set in the backdrop of a summer in 1983 Italy. Young Timothée Chalamet gives a career-defining performance and throws himself right into the public scene, and what he does with the final scene is some of the best acting that I have ever seen put to film. Both Armie Hammer and Michael Stuhlbarg give great performances as well, and just make this over 2-hour film without much of a story to follow, just a breeze to get through. Just an all-around very pleasant movie to see. At number 5, we have Get Out. It is insane that this movie has ended up getting a Best Picture nomination, considering the Academy usually isn't too kind to genre movies, and it came out in February. The Academy has always been an organization that seems to have a very short memory, so this nomination, and its 3 others, including Best Director for Jordan Peele, is truly amazing. Not to mention, the movie absolutely deserves it, and is honestly pretty great all around, with Jordan Peele's directing standing out and becoming an absolute character on its own. The film is crazy entertaining on your first watch, but where it really shines is on its second watch, and you can see how the inevitable climax was building this whole time. Daniel Kaluuya and Allison Williams both give very interesting performance, and Allison Williams gives a particularly chilling performance throughout the whole thing, especially when you look back on it. Many people have seen it already, but if you have not checked this one out, I highly recommend you do. At number 4 is Darkest Hour, a retelling of Winston Churchill coming into power towards the beginning of World War II and him overseeing Operation Dynamo, or what is better known as the Dunkirk evacuation. While the film overall is very well done, well paced, and is very pretty to look at, what elevates it is this truly incredible performance from Gary Oldman, who definitely needs to win Best Actor for this. What he does with Churchill is an all-time great performance, and you'll be transfixed on what he does the entire film. His performance alone makes this worth seeing and elevates it this high on my list. Although I will say Lily James and Kristen Scott Thomas do a very good job in their roles. At number 3, we have Phantom Thread, a movie I didn't think I would enjoy heading in, but one I left absolutely loving. Set in 1950s Great Britain in the world of high fashion, the film uses this backdrop to tell a beautifully twisted love story. With this being the apparent last performance from acting legend Daniel Day-Lewis, it adds a sense of weight to the whole film, and you can see why he chose this to be the possible end. But the main aspect that has to be mentioned here is the costume design. It is also creative and beautifully immerses you in this time period and makes this movie feel so real despite having a really weird and out there love story. And while that love story itself, like I said, may be too weird for some, I think if you give it a chance you may love the film like I did. The film is very risk-taking, and about halfway through, that's when you finally understand what this movie really is, and if you're with it on this ride at that time, you will love it. At number 2 is Lady Bird, the overall most surprising movie for me. Walking out, I couldn't believe how much I ended up loving it, considering it was a story that I really couldn't relate to. Following the last year in Catholic high school for Christine, Lady Bird McPherson, as she deals with wanting to head out to college on the East Coast and how her family, in particular her mother, deals with this. Featuring wonderful performances from Saoirse Ronan and Laurie Metcalf, and just all-around great direction from Greta Gerwig, this film is absolutely brilliant to watch, and has so much charm in every scene that you will be thinking about it long after you see it. I can't believe this ended up being the last movie I saw of all these, and it was actually my second favorite. Sometimes that's just how it works. The movies you don't expect to love as much as you do, you end up loving more than almost all of them. It is truly not just one of the best nominations, but one of the best movies I saw this year. And finally, at number 1, we have Dunkirk, the film from July that has truly stuck with me ever since I saw it. From The Dark Knight to Inception, Christopher Nolan is a brilliant director, and I love almost all of his films, but this one is definitely my favorite of his, and that's so surprising to say when I never expected this movie to overtake The Dark Knight. But this movie is now also an all-time favorite of mine in general. This was one of the few truly transcending movie-going experiences that I'd ever have in my life. I recommend it to anyone as it's coming back into theaters and you need to see this movie on the big screen. While I don't think IMAX is the end-all be-all, it does improve the film, but I've seen it on normal theaters and I really enjoyed both experiences. So I think if you see it on a normal screen, you'll have just as great of an experience. So just if you can see it in theaters, I stress it, you must. Nolan brilliantly puts you on those beaches with those men and gives you perspective of a war you never expected to see in a movie. This film strips away all the typical war cliches and just delivers you the true horror of it all, and this is why it is something you will never forget. And while most of the acting is physical, it is all very well done, and you can commend all the actors who truly are giving it all throughout the entire movie. And I will say, it is actually a pretty short watch. It's only about an hour and 45 minutes, so if you don't have a ton of time, you can definitely still check this one out. Well, that is my list. I hope you enjoyed it. I highly recommend almost all of these movies, and I'm going to tell you to at least give each one a chance and see what you may think. Even though I may have not liked some of them as much, there's a reason they are nominated for Best Picture, so, like I said, go give them a shot for yourself. And that is it for this list. Hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, so go watch some movies.